If you're just getting into running and you're trying to decide between the entry-level Apple Watch and the entry-level Garmin for running, this video is for you. I'm going to go through why I have both and why you may want to consider one over the other. Let's get into it. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit more about my personal running history and how I ended up with these two watches. So last year I ran my first half marathon, and before that I had really done hardly any running at all. I would say I was a very beginner runner. Probably the most I had ever run in my life was about 4 miles, but then I kind of got bamboozled by one of my friends to running one. She asked me to run with her, and then she ended up ditching me before the actual thing. But I was so far into training by then, I was just like committed to doing it. And I kind of got hooked at that point. I thought it was really nice having a goal to work towards. And so I ended up doing another half marathon last year. And then so far this year in 2023, I've also done 2 half marathons, and I'm currently training for my first full marathon. And so when I first started training, when I first signed up for my first half marathon last year, I immediately went out and I bought an Apple Watch, and I bought basically the entry level model, and it worked really pretty well for me through my first training cycle. But after I started to consistently do longer runs, I really noticed more problems with it. So I've done 4 half marathons in my running career so far, and 3 out of the 4 half marathons, my Apple Watch has died before the end of the race. So I just knew that, especially now that I'm training for a full marathon, I would not be able to make do with just my Apple Watch. And so about a month or 2 ago, basically I looked on the Garmin website and I tried to find the cheapest one that was labeled for running, and I bought that one. So that's how I ended up with these 2 watches. In terms of the specific models I have a 2019 Apple Watch SE with cellular and GPS. And then I also have a 39mm Garmin Forerunner 45S. The price is a big differentiator between these 2 watches. So the Apple Watch is about twice the retail list price compared to the Garmin Forerunner. So currently the Apple Watch is listed for $399, although when I bought this, I got it for $50 off for Black Friday. And then the Garmin Forerunner is listed on the Garmin website for $199, although I think you can definitely get it for cheaper. Personally, I got it for only $129 or $129.99, and that was off of Amazon. I'll link the specific one I got on Amazon down in the description box. Now I'm going to talk about some of the specific features of these 2 watches, and I'm going to keep it relatively high level. I'm going to be honest, as kind of an intro beginner runner, I'm not really concerned with a lot of these super advanced features or a lot of features outside of running. But if you are like specifically interested in a particular feature, I would honestly just check the website of these 2 watches. But here's kind of a general overview. So overall, they both have really similar features when it comes to the basic running and watch features. So of course they have basic watch features for telling the time, alarm clock. They have heart rate tracking, GPS, and for your basic running stats, they're going to be pretty much the same. So they both have speed, distance, pace, calories, and heart rate. So overall, pretty similar, although if you look into the nuances, there's some slight differences, but in terms of the basic running features, I really didn't notice much of a difference. The battery life is a really big differentiator between these 2 watches, and ultimately this was the reason that I bought the Garmin. So technically what these both say in terms of battery life is the Garmin will last up to 7 days in smartwatch mode, so I think not really using the features, but in GPS mode, it says it will last 13 hours. So this is absolutely plenty of time to run a full marathon in GPS mode. The average marathon course limit is about 6 hours, so you could probably run like 2 marathons in the time that it would take for this to die. Although I haven't put that to the test. The longest I've run with this thing is 18 miles, and I haven't had any problems with it so far in terms of running out of battery life. However, from the Apple Watch SE, it says that it can last up to 18 hours, but when you look at the fine print of the Apple Watch battery life claims, what they say is that all-day battery life is based on the following use: 90 time checks, 90 notifications, 45 minutes of app use, and a 60-minute workout with music playback from Apple Watch via Bluetooth. And so ultimately what that means is the Apple Watch battery life estimates are only considering a 1 1 hour workout. And if you are training for a half marathon or a marathon, you are probably going to be working out for over 1 hour at a time. And it's not guaranteed that it's going to just drop dead at an hour. Definitely not. But the 18-hour battery life claims really don't take into account a longer workout. For example, I just got back from a 14-mile run for my long run today, and my Garmin was totally able to handle it, no problem. And it was a pretty slow run. Despite that, tracking all my miles and everything, I still have about half of my battery power left on my Garmin. I'm super happy with that. I think my Apple Watch actually has less battery than my Garmin, and my Apple Watch was like barely even doing anything. Well, I was listening to podcasts and music, but I was not tracking my workout whatsoever. So I have been super happy with the battery life. I haven't run a full marathon with it yet. I've had absolutely no problems with battery. So far I'm liking that part a lot better. So now let's talk about the pros and cons of the Garmin and why I think it may be worth purchasing as a primary running watch or as even a secondary watch like I personally wear. Number one is the longer battery life. This is the only way that I can track my longer runs. And so, this is the reason I bought this, but that's not the only thing that I do like about it. Number two is the simple interface. And there are kind of pros and cons to this. Because it's so simple, it's like you can't really do that much with it. But what I like about it is when you're running and you look down at your wrist, you're not seeing a bunch of random stuff. It's not going to minimize and start showing you a podcast episode or showing you the weather or Apple Music or whatever. All it's going to show you is your pace, your distance, and the time that you've been running, or you can configure it to show you some simple metrics like your heart rate. But everything that you need to see when you're running is right front and center. I don't have to scroll around like I sometimes do with my Apple Watch. So I actually really appreciate that. And I think it's really nice to wear the Garmin on one hand and my Apple Watch on the other. And then I can just look down and very easily have everything I need to see right here. Number three is something I like about the Garmin is you can still sync the Garmin with your Apple Health data. So if the only reason that you're considering an Apple Watch is you want to be able to sync everything with your Apple workouts and it's all synced through your iPhone or Apple Watch, this is actually something that surprised me, but you can actually sync your Garmin data with your Apple Watch data as well. So everything shows up in one place. It's not going to show you as much detailed information in your Apple Health app as you would see if it was directly from your iPhone, but you can still see all the details you need to see through the Garmin app, which is the Connect app. So far, I'm really loving that. That being said, there are definitely some cons to the Garmin as well. Number one, it's a more limited feature set. You're not going to get the podcasts, music, all these things. This is a pretty bare bones watch and you really can't do that much with it. So for example, if you want to listen to podcasts or music when you're running, you're going to have to bring along your phone with you. You're not going to be able to listen to it on here. The Garmin is much more simple in terms of the interface. It's a little bit of a throwback to like a flip phone from like 15 or 20 years ago with very limited capabilities. There's no touch screen. You're just kind of fiddling around with the buttons. And technically you can do things like read your notifications if it's synced in close enough with your phone, but you're probably not going to be just like surfing around on this thing. And then number three is I have also had some problems with the charger for this. So unfortunately, I've run into a few instances where it just will not charge. And I've tried plugging it in to different outlets. I've tried, changing the charging block that it's plugged into. I've tried cleaning out the port, pushing it in more. Like I've tried so many things to get the charger to work. And I've had a lot of problems with this charger. So much so that I ended up having to buy some replacement chargers on Amazon, which was not too great, but they ended up getting the job done. This does take a very unique charging cable that I think is only used by Garmin. So just keep that in mind. The final negative that I've had is it does take a while when you're starting to get running where you have to wait for the GPS to sync. And this can take a few minutes. On one occasion, I tried to start running before the GPS had fully enabled and I figured it would just catch up right away. But unfortunately, that did not happen. It ended up taking like several miles before it fully was connected to the GPS. I don't know why. Maybe it takes longer if you're already on a run. And so because of that, I ultimately had totally messed up metrics. Like the first 2 miles, it said I ran way faster than I normally run. It said I had carved like 2 or 3 minutes off my mile time, and I just knew that that was not accurate. So yeah, definitely have had some problems with this. So let's talk about the Apple Watch and why I still continue to wear it, even though I have also bought a Garmin to wear as well. So there's really a lot to love about the Apple Watch. I would say the biggest pros are there are so many features on this thing. You can do everything from check the weather, read your emails, send text messages, look at your health data, your heart rate, listen to podcasts, listen to music. Really, there's so many things that you can do on this thing. So it's really great for running because you can leave your phone at home and still be able to listen to music, track your workouts, make a call, talk on the phone while you're running, and not have to bring your phone along. So that is a reason that I really love it. I also like how it looks. There's also so many different watch interfaces and things like that. So, there's really a lot to love about the Apple Watch. That being said, there's definitely some negatives to consider. So number one, and this is the kind of the flip side of having so many features, is I'm going to be honest, it can be a little bit addicting to have all those features right on your wrist. If you are not someone who has already been kind of sucked into the world of smartwatches, then you may want to just consider just not having something that is going to become kind of like an addicting thing right on your wrist. If you want to detach a little bit from technology and just not have all those notifications, all the emails, all the text messages right on your wrist, then you may want to consider something like a Garmin that is just not going to have all of that. At least this kind of lower level version that doesn't have as many features. There's actually a lot to be said for that. Number two, the low battery life. We already talked about that, but the battery life has been the biggest problem I've had with the Apple Watch. And I only started experiencing this when I started running. I think it's great for just everyday wear. I never have it die, just day-to-day life. But when I'm running, it will almost always die if I go anywhere near about 2 hours of running. Number three, you need an iPhone, but could be a deal breaker. And then of course, it's more expensive. So definitely some things to think about there as well.
In terms of the comfort level, I would say both watches are pretty comfortable, but I would say the Apple Watch is just a little bit more comfortable, mainly because they have this solo loop available, which is this loop without any clasps or anything. And you basically just buy the appropriate size. You have to like measure your wrist to get the right size. But I think this is so comfortable. It's also way easier to put on. So I would say the Apple Watch is a little bit better for comfort.
So I hope you found this video helpful. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the reason that I have my Apple Watch and my Garmin is because I want to still have all the features of Apple Watch. I want to be able to listen to music and make calls when I'm running without having to bring my phone along. But I also want something that I know is going to last. To be honest, it was cheaper to buy one of these for $130 and just wear both of them when I'm running rather than invest even more money and, $800 or something to get an Apple Watch Ultra, which is really something that, probably would have longer battery life for my long runs, but is also more expensive and bigger and bulkier than what I really need on a day-to-day basis, which is why I still wear my Apple Watch as my daily watch even when I'm not working out. But it's really easy to just add this along when I'm going on longer runs. And to be honest, I think it's a more affordable solution and is working pretty well for me, even though it does look a little silly when I'm running, but that's the only negative I would say of wearing both of them. So I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments. And until next time, bye.